Okay, so tonight, first story episode, because Dane deleted the other one. I'll upload more. Abbey and James and the Titanic. So, it was London, 1964. No, 1912. Abbey was a super fancy Londoner who was going on the voyage of the Titanic, the greatest and biggest ship ever made. They would sail from London to New York in record time aboard luxuries that was the Titanic. Abbey, being a fancy Londoner, got her with her fancy dress and her fancy umbrella and her fancy corset and all the other things that they had to wear back in the 1912s, and they walked aboard the Titanic. Moments later, a large man with a huge mustache, and he was the whitest boy around, named James, also went on the Titanic. James was like 21 and Abbey was like 21. So, they were the same age. So Abbey went on board and she got first class. James went on board and he got third class. Abbey was super fancy. She went right to the dinner, and she had a tea, and she put up her pinky, and she ate biscuits and crumpets, and she was very fancy. And she said please and thank you, and she used 17 knives for all kinds of different things. You don't even want to know what the last 3 are used for. So James went to get food, and there was a big pig with an apple in its mouth, so James just kind of headbutted the pig to the floor, and he started eating it like a wild animal. Ripped off the head and shoved it down his throat. It's horrible. Anywho, so after that, Abbey went to admire the deck, and Abbey went to admire the deck at the railing, and James went to the railing to puke out all of the food he had shoved down his throat. And Abbey looked at James, and James looked at Abbey, and James was like, quite a boat it is, isn't it? James was like, oh yes it is, tee-hee, tee-hee. And she had a handkerchief, because she was fancy. So James was like, you want to go dancing on the super fancy dance floor? And Abbey was super fancy, so she had to say yes. So they went dancing on the super fancy dance floor, and James was so fat he kept knocking people over. And eventually they were doing the spin, and James fell on Abbey, and Abbey almost suffocated and broke 2 of her ribs. It was horrible. So Abbey and James walked. Yeah, Abbey lived in London, and London was all about the streets. So, so Abbey and James went to the front of the boat, and Abbey was like, James, hold me up. So James held up Abbey, and Abbey spread her arms. She was like, I'm flying! And at that very moment, something very peculiar happened. James sniffed, and he sniffed again, and he got the distinct aroma of smoked ham. So he dropped Abbey off the boat and made a beeline for the food counter and ate more than he could, and he puked again. Abbey had to be fished out of the water, and she was thoroughly unfancy as she was dragged up with seaweed hanging down her hair, and her dress was completely unnotched. It was horrible. So Abbey went around the boat, and she was like, I'm going to find James and shove my umbrella down his throat. So Abbey found James, and James was like, hey, how's it going, Abbey? And Abbey was like, oh, James, you sir, mister, I am going to do things to you that you would wish were never done to you. Abbey was super fancy, so she knew, like, all of 0 insults. Yeah. So Abbey took out her umbrella and poked James right in the stomach. But James was so fat, it just kind of bounced off. So then Abbey punched him, but her fist bounced off, too. So she just like rammed him, but she flew off of his massive belly. There was a big rippling on his belly, and she slammed into the wall. And a fancy gentleman in a top hat and a cane with a monocle said, how do you do, madame? And he bowed the fancy bow with his hat off, and he picked her up, and Abbey was like, oh, thank you, sir. What is your name? And he said, my name is Sir Nicholas. And Abbey was like, oh boy, finally someone fancy. Sir Nicholas was like, so Abbey, do you want to go dancing? So Abbey and Sir Nicholas went dancing, and they were the best dancers in the house, and everyone made a circle around them, and they danced and danced until the crowd could not ooh and ah anymore. and they retired to Sir Nicholas's study.
It's Sir Nicholas.
Sir Nicholas's study. And Sir Nicholas started reciting poetry to Abbey, because that's what fancy people did back then. That was romantic. Today it's all about pineapples and pineapples. So Nicholas is reciting poetry, and Abby's like, "Oh, Sir Nicholas! Oh, tee!" She's like, "Oh." And Sir Nicholas was like, "Oh yes, I'm so fancy, and now I'm going to kidnap you!" So Nicholas kidnapped Abby, and he took her down to the boiler room, and James caught wind of it. Well, like, he caught the smell of the biscuits Abby put in her pockets, and he was like, "I want food!" So he jumped and jumped on the floor until he broke the floor, and he fell through the floor, and his massive fatness propelled him down, 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 until he broke through the bottom of the ship. And a huge spout of water came up, and it pushed away Sir Nicholas. But Sir Nicholas would not be stopped. He grabbed Abby, and he ran, "The boat's going to sink! We must get out of here!" So he looked out the hole, and there sat an iceberg, and he's like, "This is the perfect way to get out!" So he jumped onto the iceberg with Abby. And James was at the bottom of the ocean, but his massive layer of fat protected him from the cold. And so he floated up because he was so fat, and he rammed the iceberg, and it hit the ship. And there was a big grinding sound, but icebergs don't sink ships. That's just what they tell you. That's what they want you to think. And James was like, "Give me those biscuits!" And Sir Nicholas, because it was super windy and cold, he's like, "I'll never let you have Abby. She's too fancy for you, James. We duel to the death." So Nicholas pulled out his sword cane, and James pulled off an icicle, and they had a duel. And Sir Nicholas did his pre-battle rituals. He swung his sword in all kinds of fancy ways, and James ate the icicle, and then puked out the icicle shards. And they stabbed into Sir Nicholas, and he fell into the frigid water and was never seen again. Or was he? Bum, bum, bum. So then James ran to Abby, and Abby ran to James. She's like, "Oh, James, thank you for saving me." And then Abby grabbed Abby's pockets and ripped it off of her dress and ate the biscuits. And so Abby and James, with Abby nuzzling in James's belly flab, eventually made it to New York, safe and sound. Although Abby was suffered traumatic experiences, and all she could ever think about anymore was belly flab and dress nuttery. And so ended the tale of Titanic. Now, the tale of Titanic was very sad. The total death count was some number that was very big, and it was very difficult. And so, from this day forward, the Titanic was blamed on James, the big, fat, pasty white kid. The end.
They never made babies.
Oh. Well, they were on the iceberg for a while now, Dane. When you're on the iceberg for that long of amount of time, icebergs don't go very fast, and eventually they ran out of things to do, and so, you know how it goes. And so when they got to New York, they raised their 37,000 kids.
Did they have to, like, stand on each other's shoulders?
No,
Fit on
they
the
made the babies into paddles, and they paddled their way back with the baby paddles. They became masters at baby machine construction. And so that was the tale of Abby and James and the Titanic.
The end.
The end.
The end.
Yay.
Yep.
It's Cousin Cam Story Mode, episode 1.
So, Owen and Sarah, we don't have that many days left.
Oh, also, we should tell you this now. We are going to put all future story episodes on server.com. And anybody can go and look at those and comment on those and put whatever they want. But I'm going to make story episodes at my house. I'll upload those, like, whenever I feel like it. Probably a lot.
Jake, maybe you should send them to our emails, too.
Yeah, once we can get...
Because I've never been to server.com. I'm not even
We
sure
will show you how to
go.
get to server.com. We'll send you all links to your emails that we can create accounts with our names so we can talk to each other and stuff. And it'll be super awesome. My dad has his comic book adventures and we can all upload.
Molly has a little thing that's called Molly's Corner, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
but
Molly...
it has been updated since 4th grade.
Oh, and we can put a little column that says Molly's Rant.
The beginning of 4th grade.
And she can rant about things that happen on Animal Jam. And Owen can have a plushie counter. We'll put that on the front page of Owen's plushie count. And it'll be awesome. You know, we'll do all kinds of cool stuff. Oh, and we're going to do a movie. A long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away in 1990. All of our moms and dads and Grandma and Grandpa made an amazing video called Easy to Kill. And it was like, we've been making movies that are stupid. We're sending you another spy movie. And it was super cool. We're going to make an Easy to Kill 2 based off the script by Uncle Tim. So,
We'll show you the original by the grown-ups.
Yes, so that'll be at Christmas. And we'll send you prop lists because it's going to be a serious movie. So,
Alright.
until then, we miss you guys.
Yep.
Miss you.
Skype you soon.
Yep.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.